What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the live stream. Happy to be here again, the third stream of the week. It's Friday. We have a lovely weekend on the front of us. How everyone is feeling today? Puyapal, nice to see you. Thunder, what's up? How you doing? Mike, Ron, Nons, Zopeak, nice to see you too. Really Hot Fixers, that's right. We have an early stream because, it's Friday. I want to go to meet my friends too at the end of the day. So streaming a little bit before that and also having a little bit of fun. Today we have a special stream actually. We have a very special stream today. We are going to literally have a conversation with Chris Morel to his podcast called it Over Engineer. We are going to dive into the internals of browser testing in PEST 4. We are going to talk about everything in between and probably many other things. And yeah, it will be super fun. Ron, nice to see you. Tech AB, nice to see you. Luis Cruz, nice to see you too. What's up, everyone? And in case you don't know me, my name is Nuno Maduro, PHP and Laravel developer, streaming pretty much every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that's it for now. And if you enjoy my content, please subscribe my channel, put a like, and all those cool things. That being said, let's jump and introduce here today to the chat, Chris Morel. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? This is
Dude,
fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast, which is kind of the goal of today. And I thought, why not just stream the podcast like I have done with Matt Stauffer at Laravel Podcast? And, I think it will be cool. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. I've never done an episode live. I've thought about it, but I actually kind of like this format where folks get to see a little bit behind the scenes before we hit record as well. I think that's kind of a neat little detail.
And yeah, I mean, your podcast is actually quite big. We were just discussing backstage that Overengineered.fm literally have dudes like, Adam Watham, Taylor Otwell, Caleb Porzio too, Joe T, like all the superstars were literally in your podcast already. And how long is your podcast? Like how back in terms of dates did start your podcast?
I started a few years ago, I guess in the beginning of 2023.
Okay.
And I've been thinking about this idea for a long time of just like, a lot of times when you are having a conversation on a dev team, you get into a place where you're like, this is an interesting thing to be talking about, but we actually have to like move on to make a decision and move forward with our lives. And I thought it would be kind of fun to put together a podcast that was essentially a space to have those conversations, just like really bike shed or whatever you want to call it. Like,
yeah.
Get way in the weeds on all those things that like have always bothered me, but I've never like really had made the time or space to finally figure them out. Over the years, it's kind of shifted a little bit because it turns out you do like 5 or 8 of those episodes, and it's like, all right, we've touched on most of the big topics that have been like really bugging me for years.
Yeah.
And so now it's kind of turned more into just like an excuse to either chat with friends or or make new friends.
This is actually, just by the way, it's actually a very good example. How do you create content of the things you do already? Because you probably were having these conversations with your buddies already. The only difference is that now you are literally just recording them and publish them. It's a great way of literally making content. Like for me, it's the same thing. I'm being interviewed for this podcast. So why not just stream it? It's literally like for free, So it's a great idea. And by the way, chat, in case you don't know, Chris is the creator of Verbs. Do you guys remember that live stream we did that we talked about event sourcing? This is the guy behind it. And by the way, Chris, congratulations on that, because Verbs was the first time ever in history that I actually got what is event sourcing.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Daniel Colborn and I put that together. We worked on an event sourcing project a long time ago and had such a great experience with it, but also just had a bunch of there were just a bunch of paper cuts with it that always bugged us, and I think it bugged both of us in sort of a similar way. So even after he stopped working at Internachi, a year later, he was in Philly. We got together for coffees, and we were just chatting, and we're like, dude, someday we need to actually sit down and do this, because it's still it's still like nagging at me.
Yeah.
So it's been a fun project. We we rented an Airbnb in Baltimore and
I
wrote
saw
like
that.
the first bit of code. And I think one of the first over-engineered episodes was kind of the lead up to that, and then another one we did some of the planning live on over-engineered. So it's been an excuse to.
It was fun, man. It was the very first time I got introduced to event sourcing, and not immediately the thing screamed to my face like projectors and all these complicated terms that I will never
Aggregate
get.
root.
Exactly. So it was the first time
Aggregate root
that
is a hard term to like deal with.
if you ask me right now, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't think I will ever know. It's this kind of things that I will never understand what it is. That being said, let's jump to the podcast, dude. What is this? What is this software for people who don't know? Called Zencast, I think.
Yeah, I'm using Zencaster. It's a lot like Riverside. I think it's essentially just the same solution of we get to do VoIP chat, but it's recording high fidelity locally and then transmitting it to the server. And then I think Zencaster does a really good job of like automatic post-production. That's kind of why I use it. Essentially, I can just click a button and it will level everything and generate transcripts and
nice.
Do kind of all the little, it'll cut out like long pauses and all that stuff. So I can essentially hit publish and then never have to think about it after that.
Yeah, it's not that different, chat, from the one I have used with Taylor Otwell. If you guys remember, it was called Riverside, and that's exactly what this thing is doing. Kind of record locally, both interviewers, but also record the sound independently, then upload everything to the same server where you can do this kind of editing at the end. Cool. All right, on my side, I'm ready, so I will let you just take over, and I don't know.
All right. Let's do it. Yeah. So basically, I'm gonna hit record. I'm gonna do the intro live.
Okay.
We'll chat for a while. When we feel like we're getting to the end, I'll do the outro live, and then we'll call it. And that's my process.
Cool. Do I need to click on anything, or I just stay steady?
You don't need to click on anything.
Okay.
All I need to do is pull up my Obsidian document that has my intro because I always forget it.
Give me just 1 second, dude. Jean-Marc from YouTube is saying that there is a big difference in volume between Nuno and Chris. I want to fix that before that. Chat, write on the chat if the audio looks okay in terms of voicing. If my voice looks okay, if Chris's voice is okay. If it's not the case, let me know which voice is a little bit lower.
Testing 1 2 testing.
Testing 3 3 4.
I always say this is a test. This is only a test. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. That's my go-to say.
Okay, so Chris is the quiet one.
Chris is quiet.
Okay. Hey, dude, on my side, you are literally at maximum level at the moment. So if
I can turn my levels up. Hold on. Oh, I'm actually. Let's see. How's that sound? Any better?
It looks the same from me, but maybe different from people.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't want to clip too much.
I know. Well, I can put my voice a little bit lower.
1 2 testing.
Yeah, I will put my own. I will put my own voice lower. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And on the recording side, it doesn't matter because it's just going to level everything.
Okay.
Anyway, so.
Okay, I'm gonna put my voice lower. All right, chat. Now they should be the same. You guys on the chat, let me know.
2? Hello.
How it is right now, chat? Is it okay?
Still lower.
Wait a second. These are 30 seconds delay between.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same now. It's perfect. All right, cool. We're good to go.
Great. All right. Here we go. All right. Welcome back to Over Engineered, the podcast where we ask the question, what's the absolute best way to do things we already have a perfectly acceptable solution for? Today, I am here with Nuno Maduro. Hey, Nuno, how you doing?
Dude, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure, man.
Usually I ask my guests to do a quick introduction. I'm tempted to do one for you, but I worry that I would leave some stuff out because you've just got so much going on. So you want to just say a quick hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Nuno Maduro. I am a Portuguese software engineer working at Laravel. I'm also the creator of PEST PHP, which is a testing framework for PHP, and I guess that's it.
I know that there's a lot more than that, but that'll do for now. We'll probably get into the other things. Today, the reason that I reached out to you was essentially I've been on this multi-year quest to figure out how to make browser testing not suck in PHP. And you came out on stage at Laracon and you basically showed this demo where it was like, oh, Nuno has just figured it out. And I just really want to dig into the nuts and bolts of how you did it. I'm curious to see what you found made it possible. And it's just something that's been sort of a curiosity of mine for a number of years now. So I'm just kind of excited to hear the really gritty technical details if we can get into it. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's a lot of really interesting stuff there.
yeah, and honestly, like, feels kind of good to have more than 30 minutes to be able to talk a little
Yeah.
bit about more the details, like why I've done it and what is the reasoning, what technology did I pick, how do I solve some problems. Because at Laracon US, I had to cut out so much stuff. And for those who are listening, I was also one of the speakers at Laracon US, and I presented PEST 4, which comes with browser testing. And I had like a slot of 30 minutes, and obviously I had to demo as much as possible of what's coming for PEST v4 in terms of browser testing, but I had left so much off of it. And one of my big scaries was, are people really understanding the value of this? Because if you haven't used any browser testing in the past, you have no idea how much value we're seeing on stage right now. So maybe I was thinking, like, Chris, maybe we can start about talking a little bit about what was the existing state of browser testing in the PHP world.
Yeah.
And I will share my experience, and then maybe you can share yours too. So my
Sure.
experience was, I've started a couple projects where I needed browser testing, and I tried to use Laravel Dusk. And my experience with Laravel Dusk is it would kind of work well for the very first test or two, but once you scale your test suite to hundreds of tests, or potentially you start having some complex situations, it would always end up resulting on flaky tests, super slow test suites. We're talking about dozens of minutes, and this happened, like, I don't want to lie, but probably like between 5 and 10 times already, where I had to literally ditch out Laravel Dusk. And in the betweens of these years where I've tried Laravel Dusk, I have literally moved to other solutions. I remember the first one being Cypress. Have you used Cypress already? You had?
I've used Cypress a little bit, and I know that there's some tooling around Laravel and Cypress, but
Okay.
it's mostly I've played around with it just like, as a separate test suite, not using any of the Laravel niceties.
Right, exactly. So there is plus that Cypress is literally a JavaScript test suite, so you cannot enjoy the goodies that Laravel gives you, but also it's JavaScript. So from that point, there is already
Jeffrey Way has built a little bit of something to help ease that pain, but it's just a JavaScript testing tool. Yeah.
Right. And, I used Cypress a little bit, but I was not happy because it's not PHP. It's just kind of a pain to write a test for this and kind of make it well integrated with Laravel. And, early this year, actually, I started playing with Playwright.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy moly. Like, this is actually the very first time ever that I'm writing tests. It's not integrated with Laravel. It's not PHP, but they are fast. And they are not flaky. It's the very first time I actually thought, okay, they actually figured it out, On top of that, it came with a bunch of new features, like a natively parallel testing mode. There was a bunch of visual testing, recording. There was a bunch of new features that was like, oh, this is it, This is it. If we are going to ever have something in the PHP world, it needs to be on top of this, because this actually works,
Yeah.
Was that your experience with you as well, like over the years?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I think I've been really struck by, like, isn't it weird to be in 2025 and sort of think, oh, the open source solution from Microsoft is probably the good one? Like I feel like they've become such good stewards of like open source tooling in the last decade or
Oh yeah.
5 years or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And it's just such a strange shift. But yeah, when I started hearing about Playwright, I remember being like, oh, okay, we have to try another tool, right?
Hmm.
But I think I gave it a little bit more, or I was a little bit more willing to actually give it a shot because of that, because like Microsoft has been doing a really good job of producing good tooling for developers. Um, and yeah, I definitely found myself thinking like, do we just ditch Dusk and just rewrite everything as Playwright tests? And for those things that are like a little bit annoying, okay, we just write if you need to authenticate, you just go ahead and walk through the login process for the test. Like just accept that some things are going to be clunkier, but at least we're using a tool that's, um, you know, that's solid and fast and doesn't seem to be so flaky. I felt the same way. Um, I think that Chrome driver has gotten a little bit better in the early days of using Dusk and Chrome. Um, I know in our code base, at least, we had a lot of custom scripts that would like essentially check a checkbox through JavaScript because Chrome driver would like not consistently check the checkbox if you just asked it to, or there were a lot of workarounds that you had to do to make the tests actually work.
Hmm.
So I think that the like browser automation in general has gotten a lot better across all the platforms, whether it's Selenium or Cypress or Playwright. But Playwright certainly seems to be the most solid at this point.
Right. One quick
Yeah.
question, dude. This will be post processed, right? Because I'm not seeing my voice
Yes.
being recorded on the bottom. Is that normal?
Yep. Nope, you're fine. Yeah, I
Okay,
see it
thank you.
over here. It's all gonna be leveled and post processed and
Okay,
you
cool.
know. And if not, we've got your YouTube videos, so we'll
That's
be
right.
fine.
That's right. Just on the topic of
um,
the Microsoft situation, I kind of feel like they have a bunch of good tooling now. Microsoft have just changed
yeah,
this mentality of actually shipping good software, in being open about software too. I mean, TypeScript is
yeah.
probably the biggest example.
TypeScript, VS
Playwright is.
Code.
Oh yeah, VS Code, of course. Now being the default editor for many people, um, and I'm honestly just happy that they actually also open source Playwright, because I do truly feel that it's so good. Like, and even on this quest of migrating Playwright to PHP, and I have to tell you about that because that's another story too.
Okay.
And on this quest, I just noticed that they're actually super. They have Playwright for Go, for Python, for Rails, and also
Hmm.
like, dude, like 80% of the work I have done on this migration of Playwright to PHP was guessing the API, because the internals, I'm using literally the internals to write a PHP SDK for Playwright, and none of it was
Okay.
documented. So I spent like, dude, days and days together with actually some people. Puyapal is one of them. Do you know Puyapal?
Mm-mm.
You don't know? It's this buddy of mine who is working with me on many projects like Pinkery and now Passport 2, and we had to literally decode Go in the way Go and Python are using Playwright to kind of
Mm.
have that same style on PHP. So we have to guess many things to be able to build this SDK. But on that topic, so the way it works, if you want to get into the details, is that Playwright has this server mode. Let's call it that way. In the
Mm-hmm.
server mode, here's to a specific protocol, and that's the protocol we had to
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah.
And the way we communicate from PHP is through WebSockets.
Yeah.
Okay, that's partly the reason why this is actually so fast and feels so native. It's because it's actually fast behind the scenes. We are literally
Yeah.
interacting with the Playwright server, just like JavaScript does, just like Python does, just like Ruby does. but we are doing it in
Yeah.
PHP, and we are communicating through WebSockets. Now, that WebSockets communication obeys to a specific protocol that was not documented. So we had to guess all the entire thing to be able to build an API on top of this. And yeah, it's so, once it was done, I was like, holy shit, like we cracked it, it's working. So
Yeah. That's pretty gnarly. Like, I didn't realize that you had to write your own SDK. I assumed, because the way that these other tools work, or the other implementations that connect with PHP, they're essentially just like communicating with some intermediate process that then actually sends the commands, right? So
right.
in the case of Dusk needs Chrome driver to be running, and then it's communicating with Chrome driver, which is then communicating with Chrome. I mean, I guess it's a little bit the same, but it sounds like you're kind of operating at a lower level
Exactly.
than these other tools. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
I
awesome.
I think like the biggest difference, if you want to compare it a little bit with Dusk, is that with Dusk we had this thing in between, call it PHP WebDriver or whatever,
Yep.
which is effectively the SDK of the underlying
Yep.
tool being used by Dusk.
Yep.
While if I wanted to have Playwright, and for me that was a must, because I wanted to build on top of modern tooling, on top of things that I know that are actually working in 2025. I wanted Playwright, so I had to literally build everything from scratch. And that story actually began here on livestream. Some of the people here, which I call Nuno Nation, on my YouTube channel, they actually saw the very beginnings of this journey, and we literally started building this Playwright integration. And at some point, Taylor saw a little bit of it, and he was like, "I think you actually have something B here. Maybe you want to just stop talking about it and kind of making it a little bit more special to Laracon US." And he was right. I
Yeah.
think like my talk ended up being, successful in my eyes, because most of what people were seeing was new. You know what I mean? And that kind of
Yeah.
made the
I
O
mean,
effect a little bit.
I want to give you a little more credit than that. I think that like the contents of your talk was very interesting, right? And I do think the splash was very exciting. But I also just want to say, I mean, I said this to you in Denver, and I'm going to say it again. Watching you present is really just a joy, and I think that um I think that you could honestly be showing off anything and it would be like really fun to watch, just
You're too
because you
kind.
clearly are having fun up there. And you're very good at it. You're very good at keeping things accessible, going fast but not too fast. uh I mean, I felt like there were moments where you were like typing and zooming and swiping somehow at the same time. I don't even know how you were doing it.
Yeah, it's just
So
that by the way, it's not natural talent like Caleb Porzio is, or Joe T. It's just literally muscle memory. So I just rehearse like 300 times off stage.
yeah.
And then it reaches a point where I can just do it without even thinking. It just comes
Yeah.
literally muscle memory. And you have been speaker as well in Laracon EU, so you know the nerves. You know
Yeah.
what is going to a Laracon stage is nerve wracking. It's honestly, I don't know why I do put myself on those situations, because I feel I
Yeah.
was dying, dude. Before Aaron Francis saying da 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 Nuno Maduro, I was literally dying inside. The nerves was
Yeah.
literally consuming my body so much, and you know exactly what this is. So
Yeah. I felt the same way. I mean, I said it to my wife when I got back from Denver. Like, I don't know why. Like, why do we put ourselves through it? I mean, it is fun, but it's like I was glad to have. I mean, you had kind of the perfect spot, right? Because you're like the first of the day. At least you
yeah,
get it over with. I
yeah,
was the first one after lunch, so I only had to wait half a day in like anxious terror, and then I was
yeah,
able to like calm down and enjoy the rest of the event. But
yeah.
yeah, it does. I don't think people necessarily understand exactly how much time and energy goes into the preparation. The number of times that you just are sitting in an empty room talking to an imaginary audience,
Dude,
like trying to deliver the talk, but also like keep mental note of the things that you want to change for next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
It is exhausting. Mentally wise, it's so draining. Like I know that every time so I only do rehearsals at the end of my day because I know that after that, the only thing I can do is gaming because I'm just exhausted. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you're just done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, just getting back into a little bit of the topic of browser testing. So, I remember like when I finished this SDK with Playwright, one of the very first things I wanted to do is there is multiple things I wanted to do. One of them being, making debug more accessible. I mean, we can get into that in a second, but also like, I didn't like the API from Playwright
Okay.
because it was too verbose. It was kind of leads to flaky tests if you don't use it carefully. So I wanted to use it. I wanted that API to be written in the way that anyone would not write flaky tests. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you an example. Like, if you go, for example, to a form, if you click on log me in, for example, the first thing you see after that is a redirection happening, and then you see the form being displayed, potentially being displayed with milliseconds difference because JavaScript, and then you see the form being displayed. Now, if you're not careful, you click on login, and if you instruct Playwright to type on the input immediately, you would have a failure because Playwright will tell you, well, you want me to write on this given input, but I don't have the locator yet available. It's not on a page yet.
Yep. Yep.
In your own eyes, you don't see this difference because it's too fast. But because Playwright is also fast, you will actually see a blank page because of the redirection before the input appear. And for me, this was like not unacceptable, but it just we have as a lot of L developers, you know that we have very little pain for tolerance. So on this integration with Playwright, the first thing I did was, okay, I need first of all a very good API to work with, and I think Dusk have an amazing API in terms of naming of methods. That's actually a very good API. So I loved it. So I just literally port the entire API to use Playwright behind the scenes. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
But then I've built an internal system of retries that basically prevent flakiness completely. Because if you attempt to locate, for example, a given input and it's not there yet, it will just retry. And it will ask Playwright, is already there? Playwright will tell you, well, not yet. I don't know what's happening, but it's not yet there. And it will basically keep retrying, meaning that once the redirection is over, once React boots, once it does its own ticks behind the scenes, and the form actually gets displayed, Playwright will be there to catch the input and actually type the elements. And I build this in the way that every single method you may be using, things like type, press, click, drag, all those things will be retried if Playwright cannot locate them. And I think the value of this retriable system is actually very good. So I just literally added browser tests to Cloud, to Laravel Forge, to other projects of mine, and there is no flakiness at all. It just works. So that's one
awesome.
of the things.
Is that something that if you want to, you can dig into and configure? Like if you're trying to sort of write a test for a situation where you want to account for where you don't want the test to be resilient because you're trying to test a scenario that you want to ensure isn't sort of flaky under the hood. Is there a way to sort of like opt into a more strict mode?
No, well, not at the moment, but I could potentially do it. Something you can do at the moment is configure the timeout, meaning that in some of these actions, like typing on input, there is a timeout on this. So Playwright at some point will tell you, well, I've attempted to locate this input, but I was not able for the last 5 seconds, so I'm going to stop. So that timeout is configurable. So we'll keep trying until the timeout expires. But I don't think I have built a way of not retrying at all. And honestly, I think that people don't want that. People want to be able to just work behind the scenes.
It's probably, Okay, I actually want to step back further for a second because I think I think that one of the hardest parts of writing browser tests, or one of the most painful parts of writing Dust tests, um, for me was not necessarily the test runner. It wasn't necessarily Chrome driver or Selenium or whatever it is. Um, it was the fact that you had to spin up a separate server, right?
Right.
And that was actually mostly the thing that I focused on when I was trying to solve this myself. Um, and I think that the fact that you have to run PHP Artisan Dusk instead of just running your tests regularly, the fact that Dusk under the hood has to copy in a special env file over
Yeah.
and then copy it back at the end, the fact that you can't use refresh database or do any of your normal test setup stuff, like those were such high pain points for me.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you know, that solving that problem seems like the biggest breakthrough here. Um, so I don't know. Let me tell you a brief story of, of the ways that I tried to solve this that didn't work. Because probably maybe 2 years ago, I worked on a package that I called Dawn, where essentially I tried to spin up a bunch of like sub processes from the dust from inside of my test run, inside of the test runner, where it's essentially spawning Chrome driver in one process, spawning a special separate web server that we're going to intercept the tests in a separate process, spawning a third process to manage the Chrome driver, because the problem with that WebDriver implementation that you were talking about, that Dusk uses, is it's fully synchronous. So if you need to pause execution to let your test continue to run, you can't. Um, and I went down this crazy path of basically passing JSON over standard in and standard out to communicate with all these processes. Um, and technically it worked, but it was actually slower than Dusk because of all the IO. And it just felt bad, you know? So after basically building a fully working asynchronous Dusk alternative, I just kind of walked away from it because it's like, if this isn't faster than Dusk, what's the point, you know? Um, Probably, I don't know when, but many, many months later, I was talking with someone about like, oh, here's this funny story of this thing that I did that didn't work out. And as I'm having the conversation with them, I had this like aha moment of, oh, well, if we just rewrote like some of the web drivers internals to make them work inside of something like an event loop, maybe there's a way to do it. And I realized, oh, this is like if you use something like React PHP and an event loop, um, this is totally possible. Um, and it's something that is technically possible to do with Dusk because of that. But the problem is you still have all the other problems that you mentioned, like all the flakiness and sort of like weirdness around Chrome driver
Mhm.
or Selenium implementations. Ultimately, I have a PR open right now against Dusk that's like, this is a way to do it. But the people who I've seen try to use it on like really big Dust tests, they just run into weird issues, and I'm like, I don't know how to solve that right now. I don't have the time. Like, it is what it is. Um, so I'm curious, like, what was your approach to addressing? And we may even need to talk a little bit more. I'm not sure if I'm describing the problem super well, because it's this weird technical limitation that's not exactly straightforward, but is what I think makes like PHP based browser testing so unpleasant to use.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know if you feel like I've described the problem well enough, or you
Yeah.
want to take a shot at
No,
it.
no, you described the problem well enough, and it's funny because your journey trying to solve, you know, the fact that it is two separate process is very similar to my journey. So I'm gonna just share a little
Yeah.
bit about the story and how did I solve that problem. So, once I was done with this SDK playwright, and I have built this whole Dusk API on top of it with this retriable system. we reached a point where we were kind of happy with the solution, but I was not truly happy because, just like you said, I wanted to enjoy a little bit of this goodiness that Laravel gives me. Things like notification fake, queue fake, or being able to assert that something was, someone was logged in at the end. And funny enough, just before that, the way I have built it before all this event looping story was actually also doing what you said. I was literally spawning a separate process for each one of the parallel modes, because I forgot to talk about this, but literally parallel mode is also something I wanted to unlock. So I was, spawning a separate HTTP process for each one of the parallel workers and setting the environment variables through the headers. So this is like all this old magic situation behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So the environment variables would go through the headers of the request and then would be kind of unpacked by that separate process and being set up in system before handling the actual request. So this was my original solution, actually. I mean, this worked, I would say, for a month like this. And it was working quite well, meaning that parallel testing was working, so unlocked the speed I wanted. It was fast already. But again, for two things, it was not good enough. The first one is that it wasn't well integrated with Laravel, just like Laravel Dusk is not. So you couldn't use notification fake and all those goodies that Laravel gives you. But at the same time, debugging still felt like crap. Especially when you move it to GitHub Actions, it would feel impossible to debug anything really, because the only thing you would have is a screenshot. You have a screenshot and a timeout, and dude, it's just a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. Yeah.
And I was literally talking about this with we have the Slack channel at Laravel, which is the framework channel, and I was saying we have this very fun thing here, and it's fast, and however, kind of still feels like crap when I'm trying to debug and use Laravel, and that's why I sent you the pull request yesterday, because that pull request you are saying that you have made a POC of Dusk was shared to me by Tim McDonald. And he told me, dude, you might actually want to look into this idea of Chris Morrell, because I think maybe he has something interesting on it. And I start looking, and I looked to the way you approached this, which was with with event looping. And the way you did it is actually super interesting, and it's kind of what I'm doing now using a different project, because you were using React PHP and I just switched to AM PHP. But the philosophy behind this is, okay, I'm going to assert if something happens. It actually matched very well with the retriable system I have, which is I'm going to assert if something... Imagine. Yeah, I'm going to assert if something happens. And if it didn't happen already, let me free the process. So it goes to the HTTP server, which is now in the same as one as the test, and just check if there is any request to be processed. And if it is, just keep processing them. And once you are done, come back to the assertion. Is it already happy? Yep. Oh, not yet. Yeah. Go back to the HTTP process and just keep serving requests. And, this kind of solved the problem, like literally. So from that point, we literally allowed you to use things like QFake. There was a bunch of problems after this, by the way, like, for example, I had to come up with this layer on top of every single request that flushes the state like Octane does. So I kind of inspire myself a lot on Octane to do that too. Flush the state between requests, but also like, oh, dude, there was this issue. Like, so basically, like if you are using Inertia and you have a real app, chances are that Inertia actually have hard-coded URLs on the JavaScript, so which were targeting the server that built the assets. Yeah. But the server that you want to target depends of the parallel worker serving the request. So I had to hijack like the content being served to, if you find the URL, just replace with this one being used by the parallel worker. So that is like hacks like this all over the place. Either that be the, this small thing behind the scenes, or There's a bunch of shit like this, basically. But, that event loop story literally unlocked what I wanted for debug, but also for integrating well with Laravel, of being able to have the same process serving the test in the HTTP server. So if you were to fake things or mock even things, that same thing will be
It just
reused.
works.
It just works.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of worked for a bit until I actually moved this into real projects, because real projects, you start seeing like all this weirdness, all of this weirdness. It concerns the state, because for example, if you go to Vapor today, which is a heavily JavaScript application that uses Vue.js and doesn't use inertia. So actually, every time you boot the page, it just spawns like 5 different requests to fetch information. So those 5 different requests would target the same server, and you cannot have state in between that is leaked or whatever. So, there is a bunch of little things like this. But indeed, man, that event looping story that you initially described as a POC, it was a great idea that sparked kind of all this better debug story and better integration with Laravel. You had great ideas on there. I think like one of the things that I solved recently was not using React PHP, which I don't know if you noticed, but it just feels like not it just not have been up to date recently. And you know what I mean? And there is a few libraries that are just not compatible anymore. So recently, like I just rewrote the entire thing on AIM PHP. Are you familiar with it?
I've heard of it. I feel like that's the first one that started to embrace fibers when they came out. So that was kind of the thing that seemed interesting about it. But I remember when I first saw it, it was like, well, in a couple of years, I'll take a look at it, because it felt very, very bare metal at the time. Has that ecosystem expanded a lot? I haven't looked at it since then.
Yeah. So it actually works. It really works good, honestly. I feel it works even better than React PHP at this point, because it's based on fibers. It has little to no dependencies whatsoever. So that literally unlocked me.
Yeah, that's great.
You know what I mean? Allows me to install that on any Laravel application. But also, like, if the API, it's a little bit less complicated than React PHP, where if you want to do, because on my case, I wanted to combine an asynchronous API, which was the event server or the HTTP server, with a synchronous API, which is the assertions. So I had to literally jump in between serving requests and go back to this synchronous state. And with the AMP PHP, it just works almost natively. Where with React PHP, I would have to come up with all these weird functions like, I can't remember, but like just do that. If it's anything, stop there and then come back. It just it was complicated. And AMP PHP felt a little bit more natural.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, looking at the docs right now, I see that they have a ton of packages that cover like WebSockets and Redis and HTTP servers and all the things that you would need for a project like this. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah, and they also like allow me to rebuild the old WebSocket story too, because the WebSockets back then when I was building this with React PHP, it was still blocking, meaning that I would make for example, a request to Playwright, and I would have to literally wait for the response.
Yeah.
And
but with this, you can use their WebSocket client.
Exactly. So the AMP-PHP gives me an event looping WebSocket, meaning that it will literally send a request, jump back to the event looping system, just to whatever is on event loop, and then get back to the WebSocket story. So also unlocked that and just became much faster actually past PHP because of that.
That's awesome. I think, okay, before we go too much further, I think you and I get the sense that you and I have been deep in these weeds long enough that maybe we're glossing over some of the details. So I want to talk briefly about event loops and briefly about sort of the memory issue around the way Dusk operates. So let's start with that. if you if you're familiar with the way Dusk works, the reason that Dusk has all these limitations and the reason why Dusk does all the things that we talked about, copying env files and all of that, is essentially because of a single sort of restriction, which is your test is synchronous, right? When you write a test, it starts at the top of the test and executes it synchronously to the end. But in the case of a browser test, there are lots of things that need to happen in between those, like between the assertions, or even between like the setup. So like when I request a page in a browser, that might spawn 6 other requests for assets or, you know, JSON endpoints or anything else, right? And all of those things need to be handled before the next assertion runs. And so in Dusk, what that means is you need to spawn a separate browser so that a separate server, excuse me, so that that server can handle those all the requests that need to be handled before the next assertion runs. Um, what that what that means though is all of the things that we're used to running our Laravel tests, where we can sort of set up the world ahead of time and then run our assertions, are no longer possible, because when you set up the world, say you do queue fake or notification fake or whatever it is, all that's doing in Laravel is it's swapping out the notification driver with a fake driver in memory in your test. That doesn't have any impact on the separate web server that Dusk spins up. And that's also why you can't use the refresh database trait, because
Yep.
in a regular test, the way refresh database works is it migrates the database once at the beginning, and then it runs your tests inside of a transaction and rolls the transaction back between each test. So all of the data that's visible in memory in your test is inside of a transaction that's not available to an outside process, which
Yeah.
is why there's all these weird endpoints in Dusk to like force a user to be signed in or like
Yeah.
do sort of jump past things. Those exist basically to work around the fact that these two things are two totally separate memory footprints that can't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
maybe
so,
and maybe you
yeah,
can
go ahead.
expand a little bit on the why database transactions is a problem, because at scale that would be a problem for me too. With something like Laravel Cloud with hundreds of migrations, using database transactions was just impossible at scale with many browser tests. Being able to use refresh database, it just again unlocks being able to use browser testing at scale.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and so the solution that we've kind of both come uh, to answer this problem is to use an event loop. Um, you know, anyone who's familiar with JavaScript has probably interacted with an event loop. They're less common in PHP, although I feel like we're starting to see them, you know, crop up more in like modern PHP. If you've used Laravel prompts, it's not using React or AMP, but it's essentially just a big while loop that does a bunch of stuff inside of the loop, and is constantly rerunning to compute the current state of the terminal UI. Right, that's like a simple. I say simple. Trust me, prompts is not simple, but um, it's simple in that it's not using a package to do it. Um, but things like React PHP and AMP PHP are essentially very sophisticated event loops for PHP. And what an event loop is essentially just a big while statement. Um, and you essentially attach different things to happen inside that loop, right? So if you're implementing something like a timer, you're essentially saying, make sure that at least every 5 seconds this thing happens. And each time the loop uh, processes, that's called a tick. And like a timer is essentially just going to say, all right, on each tick, like, has enough time passed? If not, just keep on going. If so, then execute the callback that I was given, right? That's a timer. But the thing that event loops really unlock in PHP is much of our code is just waiting on things. It's
Oh,
waiting
yeah.
on IO. It's waiting on something where, with this WebSocket or HTTP server stuff, it's like data is just coming across this like socket, and we just have to wait for all of it to come through.
Yep.
And when you're talking about synchronous code, your code is just sitting and waiting and hoping that like the request is going to finally come through so it can operate on it. What these like more sophisticated event loop packages provide is tooling around, okay, here's an implementation of an HTTP server that um, offloads the IO so that when we're waiting, the event loop can keep on running, and it's just going to check in and like sort of when all the data has come through, then it'll continue
Yeah.
processing.
Hmm.
And that's really the thing that unlocks a lot of this capability, because you can essentially fake parallel processing by letting 2 or 10 or 100 separate like IO bound things run in the background and just check in on them inside of all these ticks until one of them comes back, and then you process it, and then another one comes back. Um, and that is, I think that's like the thing that makes uh, the sort of faux parallel operation, and it's not even faux anymore with fibers. Like fibers actually lets you um, do some multi-threaded operations in PHP, but as developers we don't have to think about it. You can just pass it a callback and say, hey, when you're ready, call this, or you can build up a server and say, hey, when you have a full request, give it to me, and the loop can just keep on running with a bunch of these listeners on it. Does that feel like it gets
Yeah,
that split
it
up?
was a great explanation about what is event looping, and it's kind of crazy if you think a little bit. Like every time we are on PHP and we do a a SQL query, for example, that takes let's say a second, you have literally 300 megabytes allocated to this process waiting for the query.
Yep.
And we never think about that, but if you think a little bit about this, it's actually like holy moly, like we have all this compute power, and it's most of its time, if not 99% of this time, because of the way PHP is built, is just waiting. It's doing a
It's
query
just
to
waiting.
it's just waiting, like doing a query to MySQL, and it's waiting. Then it's doing a query to the plain engine compiler or whatever, then it's waiting. Then it's fetching a file from the system, then it's waiting. And again, just like you described, what these tools do is that they give you underlying functions that instead of making a SQL query and just staying there waiting, just use this one, and this one will just come back to you when it's ready. And I think I have seen on the internet a little bit these illustrations about the restaurant menu thing, where instead of having wait for each person cooking its meal, you have this single manager, which is the event loop, and kind of checks on them every single time on the tick. But
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
a good way of
man.
thinking.
Yeah, but yeah, man. Using event looping was kind of one of the big unlockers for this debug and integration story, but at the same time unlocked many other things like not using database transactions, which again at scale it's just not feasible. Um, what else? Yeah, that was it for debugging integration. Kind of made the whole story there. That was a good one.
So the thing that I'm curious about, I've never looked into Playwright's parallel testing.
Hmm.
How does that work?
Great
How
question.
does that work under the hood, and how's it play into the implementation in PEST?
Yeah, great question. So the way it works is so again, Playwright is running on this worker mode, and that worker mode is the same worker mode for each one of the parallel processes. So it's just one worker mode basically, serving all the workers that we have on past PHP. And the way it
Okay.
works is that you work with identifiers basically. So you say, I want to spin a new Chrome browser, and Playwright will tell you, oh, okay, let me spin that Chrome browser for you. This is the ID. So no matter what you do inside of that single Chrome browser, this is the ID that you need to use. And I will store that ID on that parallel process. And then I have another parallel process from past doing another test, which potentially might be on Firefox or WebKit, and it tells Playwright, oh, I need another browser. And Playwright will tell you, here we go. I have now a Firefox ready for you. This is the ID. So it's a single worker in Playwright serving all these parallel modes of PEST, and the way they communicate is over a given unique ID. So it's just native parallel mode behind the scenes. And, of course, Playwright, behind the scenes itself has its own way of being performant with all these browsers. So you can spin like hundreds of browsers if you want to. And you have to deal with a bunch of things here. Like you need to clean up resources. So if you open a session, you need to close the session. If you open a browser, you need to close the browser. And if I'm not careful, it will end up all these browsers being hanging in the background, even if I finish a test suite. Because it's literally a separate Playwright worker around this. So there is all that deal to handle. But it really that's the way Playwright works in parallel mode. Works with IDs, and it's just native. It's parallel mode by default, basically.
Okay, and then I'm actually not sure. Is PEST's parallel mode using Paratest under the hood, or is it your own implementation?
Correct. PEST parallel mode uses Paratest behind the scenes, and the way Paratest works is that it's kind of simple. So PEST. So the way it works from the beginning is PEST boots, let's say, the process of PEST, let's call it this way, or boots PHP unit, and it reaches a point where, okay, do we have a -- parallel flag? And the terminal will tell me, yes, you do. And I'm going to say, wait a second, instead of running PHP unit, I'm going to run Paratest instead. And what Paratest does is spawning various processes depending of the number of CPUs that you have. So if you have 14 CPUs, it will spawn 14 parallel processes. And then you will communicate in a very performant way between the main process, or the parent process, let's call it this way, and the child processes, and deliver one test one by one to these various workers. And those various workers will communicate with the single Playwright worker mode, which is already spawned in advance by the browser testing plugin.
So are you able to use the Paratest process token as the ID for Playwright, or do you have to do something to sort of keep those in sync?
Yeah, so great question. So basically, the way that, so once we are on the parallel mode already, so imagine that we have 14 processes. Let's talk about a single one of those 14. Every single one of them will spawn its own HTTP server to serve Laravel requests. So if a task needs an HTTP server to serve requests, it will have one. And if you type visit, which is the function I am giving you to allow you to interact with the browser, that will spawn a process, and that will spawn a browser, and that browser will target that same HTTP server that works only for this parallel worker. So it kind of uses the full power that we have, because right now we have very expensive laptops, and I assume you have one too. And back in the days, with something like Laravel Dusk, you were using one CPU only, and you have probably like 14. So this literally unlocks being able to use all the power that you have, and that's why on Laracon stage I went from 10 seconds to 2 seconds only.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, but honestly, that was not a good demo, because I could have made it a little bit more spicy if I wanted to. Because if I keep adding more tests, like if I had 100 tests, for example, there you will really see the difference, because we would wait minutes for Dusk, and because we have 14 parallel workers, plus being on top of Playwright, which is by default is already twice faster, you would see it like the thing being over
it all
in
compounds.
Yeah, it all compounds, exactly. It will be this thing being over in 4 seconds or 5 seconds, and you would have to wait 3 minutes for Dusk.
That's wild.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I think all this parallel mode story really unlocks being able to use browser testing at scale, which is exactly what I wanted. Is when the things would fall apart is when I had more than 10 tests. So I wanted to be able to come up to Laravel Forge, being able to write 100 tests and not having to wait 30 minutes for the CI. And the
Yeah.
parallel mode plus Playwright, because Playwright, it's literally twice faster by default already. I don't
Yeah.
know what they do behind the scenes, but it is. If I run past right now without being in parallel, will already be twice faster.
Yeah.
So, all these compounds, and again, I have like the browser. So the test suite that I have for this plugin is 400 tests. And if I
Okay.
and if I remove all the sleeps I have here and there, it will run the entire thing 400 tests in like 6 seconds.
That's wild.
Is
I
right?
mean,
And I want to ask you,
anyone who has
yeah,
done anyone who has done any browser testing, any dust test suite at any reasonable size, if you when you just did that just the first demo, right, where you swapped out this browse with visit, just how fast you got the response back
yeah,
was kind of mind blowing,
yeah,
right?
feels like a feature
Uh,
test almost.
right. I mean, it does. It unlocks. You just don't have to be so stingy with like the browser testing situation anymore. You can just, if you want a browser test, you just write a browser test and it's fine. That's incredible.
Which leads me to a question to you. Like when you organize your test suite, I assume you have like potentially a bunch of unit tests, but you also have feature tests, right?
Yep.
So, do you see yourself keep using feature tests from this point? Like, assuming that you are a PEST user.
I mean, I think that we do very few unit tests. We do almost all feature tests, and I would see us, like I would see us continuing to think of almost feature tests as the what am I trying to say here? Uh, I think that we would end up leaning on browser tests in places that would replace feature tests, and our feature tests would be for areas that aren't really browser heavy. And it's a little bit different for us because our application is almost entirely just Laravel and Blade. We don't do a bunch of client heavy work,
Oh, you don't have JavaScript?
except
Okay.
for we have parts of the application that are full blown React apps, and we have some places where there's like pretty sophisticated Alpine interaction happening.
Right.
But for the most part, much of our app is still just full page reload and Blade templates. So I don't think I would I don't think I would switch to browser tests for a lot of those. But anywhere, I mean, more and more, we're finding ourselves writing pretty sophisticated Alpine components, and anywhere we were doing something like that, being able to do a browser test would be phenomenal. And I think we're probably going to be leaning more into inertia and React in the future. And so like this makes that, I feel like between the PEST 4 announcement and the Wayfinder announcement, I think that's those two things like push us that much further towards like, oh, we can lean more heavily into these like sophisticated browser interactions, and still have like assurance that everything's not broken.
Right. Yeah. I feel like if you are using Blade, probably there is very little room for actually having bugs on the UI. But if you use JavaScript like I'm using at the moment for many of the UIs I'm building, even Livewire, it's JavaScript at this point. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
I pretty much need, I need browser testing to be functional. And
Yeah, for sure.
and maybe can lead us to the next topic if you want to move a little bit, which I presented as well at Laracon US, which is smoke testing and visual testing. So I'm a big fan of something called smoke testing, which is
Yeah.
the part of the demo where I was demoing things like, these days people to do smoke testing, they kind of just don't do it at all, or just they use this thing called assert status 200, which, with Blade actually might work. You might be okay with it because you can actually assert C things using the native assert C from Laravel. But with Livewire, Alpine, Inertia with React and Vue, you kind of assert 200 doesn't mean anything. You can literally have a blank page.
Yep, for
So,
sure.
so that's why I also, for this PEST4 playwright integration, I've built these various helpers which are combined into a single one called Assert No Smoke. And they literally tells you as well if you have JavaScript on errors on the pages, if you have console logs being split out, and many other ideas that people gave it to me over the next few weeks. But this is something else that I truly believe to be revolutionary in the sense that I can just go to Laravel Cloud right now. I'm going to just grab all of the routes, logged in as Nuno, and just basically just check all of them if I have any JavaScript error or if any of the pages is being blank at the moment. Such an easy test to write, and I think it's also big value.
Yeah, I mean, I think that even for a more blade heavy website, doing full browser based smoke testing has a lot of value because, a good example is we might have like a Google Maps integration on the page, or, a little bit of inline JavaScript here or there. Or like the thing that we're dealing with right now is, our code base is very large.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for us to adopt. I think as a team, we're very good at keeping the code base modern, but some things are hard to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
And one good example of that is the switch to Vite. We have so much custom tooling around like the JavaScript build, essentially to implement a bunch of things that now you just get for free with Vite.
All right.
And unwrapping all of that is very hard. And there's a lot of just little inline JavaScript snippets around the code base. A great example is there's a lot of code that just assumes that functions declared in the global scope are available in the global scope, but when you switch to Vite, everything is loaded as a module, which means that these functions are no longer global. And so, essentially, over the last couple of weeks, Bogdan has been just looking at every inline script tag and, adding window dot everywhere that needs to have it, or like, and, a lot of these things, those little inline script tags are not super important. It's a little tiny page that barely anyone ever hits. They're not under test. Testing that like inline JavaScript was a pain before, and so we just didn't do it. And so something like this, to be able to just say, okay, like now we can just run everything before the switch to Vite and identify there may be script tags that are broken right now that we would have to fix.
Yeah.
We fix those. And then when we switch to Vite, we can just run those tests again and know that, that Google Maps integration that is defining, a global init map method that you pass into as a query parameter to the Google Maps thing, like all these weird scenarios that you have to deal with. We would see that error right away. It would be incredible. So I think it's a no-brainer, or it should be a no-brainer for anyone. I think it gets a little bit difficult that with a big app that has lots of routes that are bound to resources, you have to do a certain amount of setup to make them even visitable in the first place.
I think honestly, that what you just said will be probably one of the most will be the complaints on the very first days of PEST4, because people think like I can just add browser testing, it will just work. It will not just work, because you will put that on GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions doesn't have your Echo credentials or whatever. Bam, it will blow up. GitHub Actions doesn't have some of the things you potentially do locally, but you don't do it on GitHub Actions because you never need to, and it will just
Yeah.
won't work. And even things like credentials to see Google Maps is one example. Because you probably
Yeah, for
don't.
sure.
That's So you have all this setup. Like even now was like today I worked on actually heading browser tests to Laravel Forge, and Laravel Forge, the test suite runs on GitHub Actions with inertia. And actually, if the very first test I wrote, browser test, it just failed immediately because it was missing all the reverb keys, for example. And I said, oh,
Right.
okay, I need to have the reverb keys. And I had the reverb keys and was another key missing. And I think this will be the biggest complaint. However, for fresh new apps, it will just work immediately. No problem whatsoever. But that will
Yeah.
be one of the very first pain points for sure.
I do wonder if we'll see a shift, because I think that right now, my impression is, I could be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but my impression is that most test suites lean very heavily on factories, and most Laravel test suites don't just seed a database up front and then run all their tests on the seeded data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I could be wrong, but that's my impression. And I wonder if we're going to see a shift away from like sort of this just-in-time factoried data to uh, investing more time in like having sort of a main seeder that seeds all the test data that your application is going to need, because um, that will make it easier to do things like smoke testing, where you will need a ton of different models to exist in
Mm. Yeah.
different contexts.
Right.
You know, like right now, it's not a problem to do that test by test, because I'm just like, okay, I need a user. I'm going to say user factory, and I
Yeah.
need a team or whatever. I do team factory. But if I just want to say go through the entire app and test everything,
It's not
now
easy
I
now.
have to like go through and factory up
Yeah.
a million different resources before I run the code.
Yeah. On
Whereas
cloud,
if I just had a great seeder,
yeah.
it would just work, right?
I feel you. On cloud, I had to use like 30 factories, I think. Literally one by one. User
Yeah.
factory, organization factory, application factory, environment factory, deployment factory. It was like one by one, like 30
Yeah.
lines of code to be able to actually do my first assertion. And you have not like a lot of people, like the most upvoted issue on PEST at the moment is people asking me, hey Nuno, how can I use seeders on PEST? Because actually it's not that well documented. And I think even on Laravel it's not documented at all.
Okay.
So some people actually want to see, just like you're saying, not even for smoke testing, but also for just for regular tests. They want to be able to reuse the
Yeah.
same data all the time. I don't
Yeah.
initially when I saw this, I didn't get it because like if you have, you know, 10 files of tests, if you potentially create a user on the very first one, that will impact the second test potentially as a side effect.
Yeah.
So I never actually got it, and I feel like I need to actually use an approach like that on the real project to actually see how does it feel.
Yeah.
And but I have, for smoke testing, that's definitely a problem. That's one of the problems for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never, I have, my impression is it's more common in the Rails world, to sort of do a seeded, use seeders rather than factories. I could be wrong there too, but I have a friend who's in the Rails world who has talked a lot about that. And, one of the things that struck me about that approach, it's like it's a little bit of a trade-off, right? It's on one hand, um, you have to kind of think about all this seeded data across the entire application, um, what impact it might have, but it does also, in some ways, replicate a real application a little bit more. It's like our apps have to be able to handle records in the database that aren't related to the thing that you're doing.
Hmm.
And in some ways, having just like a big data set seeded first and running all
Yeah.
your tests in that means that you have to deal with like real world scenarios. because I know that like I've certainly seen tests where you're doing like an assert count that like only one thing was created or nothing was created, and it turns out the only reason that that actually works is because your test is running in isolation. It's not actually that that there's actually a bug in your code, but
Hmm.
because you're like doing everything from scratch each time, you don't get to it.
You don't get to it. Yep.
So it's an interesting approach. I don't know if it's going to be worth it because it does feel like there's a big trade-off on the other end in terms of maintaining this one big suite of seeders. But
Hmm.
I wonder if the value prop has kind of changed a little bit now that browser-based smoke testing is so much easier to do.
Hmm. I wanted to bring in a topic, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, do you? So I never did it in the past. So maybe you have done it and you see the value on it. But now I'm actually considering for Laravel Cloud, for example. Do you see the value of browser testing post deployment? So, we have this test suite that literally runs browser tests on the CI. So, this is all we talked about until
Yep.
right now. But then I do the deployment and Laravel Cloud goes live. And now I want to run the test suite, maybe not the same one, because the same one would use factories and potentially fake things, but maybe
Yeah.
another one that is a little bit more light, that goes to
Yeah.
the actual Laravel Cloud website, logs in as a past user or whatever, which
Yeah.
already has maybe a setup in place. I don't know, and checks all these services and check all these pages. Because I'm going to give you a real example of one outage that we just had on Laravel Cloud. No, people didn't saw it because it's like something really hidden, but actually the production logs were like down for one specific region. And this only happened in production because it targets a different service from staging and from dev. Um,
Mhm.
so on your test suite, you would never see it because we are faking everything, right? We are faking logs, so you would never see it. On dev and staging may actually be working because they are using little different services. But on production, we
Yep.
have this separate one, which um, was down, and we didn't saw it like literally as customer reported on support. So maybe like browser testing will also unlock a little bit of post-production testing actually, which is something I have never done it, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've used tools to do automated browser testing on like on a schedule to just kind of like confirm that in our case like that users can still register, right? Like I want to make sure that no matter what's broken, people at least can sign up for our service, right?
Uh-huh.
Or and also that the billing page works. Um and yeah, I'm trying to think. There was an uptime monitoring tool that actually had a really good suite, really good implementation of that felt like made it pretty easy to do.
Hmm.
And we ran those for a while, but the problem is they are hard to keep in sync with your application. So the
Hmm.
idea of having a test suite, I would probably want to set it up so that you can run it both in CI and in production, right? So that that suite runs. If it fails in CI, it doesn't even make it through, but then it runs again, and in production, it hits the production endpoints. Um, but like, I mean, we do this as developers. I feel like this is a heuristic that I always have of like, if I find myself going and doing something after I make changes to a feature, it's like, oh wait, I should go write a test because I'm manually testing it right now. And that's true of our production apps, right? Like you hit deploy, and especially if you're like deploying something that for various reasons, production may turn up a different errors than you had locally. You go and you log in and you go to that page and you make sure it's still working, right? So why not have automated tests for that? I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I feel like this it's something is a paradigm shift that people probably never thought about that, but I think now with past 4 potentially that will unlock that given situation too. Same goes with screenshot testing, which is something I equally demo at Laracon US, which is something that have you used on Playwright that or not really? Okay. I don't know if that was on Cypress. I don't think it was, but again, like part of this smoke testing story, a little bit of seeing if things are working a little bit as expected at the first glance, comes a little bit this visual testing, which it's something I don't know if it's official, but I call it that way. And what it does is basically works with snapshot behind the scenes. So it takes a screenshot on the first run, and then you will always be comparing that baseline with the new test running. So if you see differences, I give that beautiful slider, and which was on the demo. And I feel like even for production, something like this could be used.
Yeah,
because you are always interacting with the right. You are always interacting with the same user, which will create an app with always the same name. So basically, like, why not use screenshot testing for this too? That is something that I still need to work on, which is GitHub Actions tends to create different screenshots from the one I create locally with my MacBook.
Oh, interesting.
And so Evan, you told me, so the creator of Vue, I actually got to hang out with them a bunch. That was super fun. That would make an entire podcast just about that, because the guy is just so humble. It's just so humble. I have 1 million GitHub stars, man. If I had 1 million GitHub stars on GitHub, I wouldn't be that humble. It's crazy. So, the guy came to me and said, I don't think you will ever solve that problem because literally Chrome behaves differently in terms of rendering in your MacBook than it behaves on Linux. So the only way you have to solve that problem is to make the screenshots on the CI, upload them as an artifact, and then just hijack that to the actual code that way. But that feels clunky to me, feels weird. So I want to find a way of just working. I don't know.
I mean, there's a world where you could use Docker to render them the first time. Obviously, that's no fun.
Yeah,
but
it just lost me there with the word Docker already.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. No, I mean, it is funny how these things that we take for granted, like font rendering, like to make text show on the screen is actually such a complicated problem.
Yeah.
And it's so deeply built into the operating system down to the micro pixel anti-aliasing like implementation that it is funny. I mean, like if you look at the reason that so many people have used Puppeteer or one of those like Chromium based image capture utilities, I think in part is because it can just render text so well. Whereas if you try to do it in something like GD or even like a more sophisticated PHP implementation, it's so hard.
Yeah, but I actually, when I was first building this, I actually spent some time on it trying to understand, like, okay, why those operating systems are different. And, ChatGPT told me, oh, it's because of font issues. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use the same font. I don't care what the users have choose for this UI. If you are doing screenshot testing, I'm going to just reuse the same font, which is universally supported, So I'm doing, like, before making the actual screenshot, I'm doing a bunch of stuff before to avoid flaky screenshots. So one of the things are universal fonts. I stop any kind of animation that you may have, I don't do it. So if you have, a perfect example for this is if you have something that fades in, fades out, that's like perfect for making flaky tests.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because if you don't go in the exactly same millisecond, the fade in will be slightly different from the baseline. Yeah. So I don't do animations at all. There is a bunch of CSS stuff that I disable before actually making the screenshot. You don't see a difference, honestly. If you make 2 screenshots with all this stuff and without this stuff, it will look the same. But for visual testing, they are different. So I do a bunch of stuff. However, it did fail on GitHub Actions for some of my projects. So I need to come back to that topic, probably post-release, because I'm out of energy for this project at the moment. I spent too much time on it. It was literally the last 3 months And I honestly just thanks to Laravel, honestly, because if they wouldn't allow me to work on this stuff, it would just not work for me. Because
Yeah, that's incredible.
live streaming plus all my other open source projects and plus my life, gym work and everything. If
Yeah,
Laravel wouldn't tell me, okay, well, just take this week off to work on PEST and just finish that, or if they wouldn't give me time to work on my talk, even I wouldn't not have time for this.
yeah,
Browser testing is a serious thing, man. A lot of stuff into it.
yeah. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, with the font stuff, even using the same font across the whole stack, I don't know that that's going to do it because the same font is rendered different by different rendering engines.
That's
And
what Evan you told
there's
me. Yep.
yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, there's maybe a world where you can get away with like I accept a certain threshold of change,
The thing is that when you go down that path, you know what I mean? Like if you accept a certain level of changes, then you are not pixel perfect, which is
Yeah.
something that at Laravel, at least the designers here, they will kill you for it.
Right. That's
Yeah,
fair.
at
That's
Laravel, like
fair.
they go up to the pixel level. It needs to be like pixel perfect, exactly like it is on Figma. If it doesn't match
Yeah.
perfectly, it's not the same design.
Yeah.
So if we go down that path, that was my original thinking. But if we go down that path of okay, let's accept some level of threshold. Okay, it might be differences, but the threshold might be like 1% or whatever. Then it's not
Yeah.
pixel perfect anymore, which will
Yeah.
work very well for CI and font issues. But then maybe there is actually something that is not pixel. It's not any more pixel perfect, and it's not
Right.
captured by the visual testing.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting problem. You know what? I'm glad it's not my problem to solve.
Yeah, I mean, just a huge shout out to people who actually also helped me with this past 4 release. Puyapal is one of them, cracked a bunch of the playwright stuff behind the scenes. Adrian cracked a bunch of this visual testing capacities because, it's not something given by playwright. So we literally are using various things to make this visual diffing possible. So we preserve things as binary, and then we ask Playwright to convert it to binary, and then we compare these two binaries using something from Cloudflare. So all this kind of feature was built by Adrian, and then I have kind of make it a little bit more Laravel-ish friendly. Sonali also worked on Past 4. And my wife for literally just being patient with me because I work literally from my room, so I'm streaming from my room too, and just sometimes having to deal that I work until 3 a.m. every single morning, every single night is not easy.
Yeah.
Honestly, thank you for you too, because I mean that small POC that you have made for Dusk also kind of sparked a bunch of possibilities on this Past 4 project. And John Purvis for making the profanity checking on Past 4. So actually, I didn't demo the entire Past 4 release at Laracon US. So there's multiple other things that we are going to ship with Past 4, including type checking, which is something that... So we had type checking before, type checking coverage, which allows you to see how many types you use in your code base. But now on Past 4 will be twice faster and instant on subsequent runs. So we have that. We have profanity checking. So if you have any bad word in your application, we are going to detect them for you. And this was done by John Purvis. Thank God PEST is open source, honestly, because I wouldn't be able to build all of this myself.
Yeah.
Caleb takes an approach a little bit different from mine, I feel, because I'm super open about all this stuff, and he comes up with Livewire 4, also with a bunch of features, but feels a little bit more closed than me, at least. He kind of works on his own space, on his own thing, and by himself, I feel.
Yeah, I think that his approach to open source is a little bit it's just different. It's like he's giving the code out and he accepts contribution, but I think that it's like he's building it, and if your contribution works for what he's doing, he'll accept it, but he's like he's like holding it a little bit tighter, which I think is just like a different approach. It probably just works better with the way he is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, open source Working on open source is so much fun. And I love that component of it. I mean, I think at InternetG, we've benefited so much from just random folks bumping into issues that we haven't bumped into yet and fixing them in our packages. You
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
Hmm.
um, and that's basically how I've kind of thought about it. I think I'm probably a little bit more like Caleb in that I put a lot of stuff out there and I'm happy for contributions, but like it's mostly like I'm building the thing the way we need it. And if other people can benefit from that, I that makes me so happy. Um, but the number of times that someone has come back and said like, "Oh, here's like a fix for this little edge case," or here's a translation, you know, in another language, um, has been really really helpful. It's such a great part of the process, you know.
Yeah, that is goods and bads in open source. Like the good one is the one
Yes.
that you just mentioned. Obviously, having this project growing so much because of contributions, and I have, countless projects that have grown so much because of people, literally people that they are less, less social media than me, but they actually are big, big things on this open source project that I built. But also like you know, I kind of have built a filter over time around this. But
Yeah.
I talked about Taylor about this situation, but I remember like back in the days, 4 or 5 years ago, I would spend, 5 months or whatever building something, just working my ass off to have something out, and that single comment would just destroy my entire week, literally just destroy me
Yeah. Yeah.
completely. And people sometimes have no idea how just being mean with others can just affect people, not everyone is
Yeah.
the same. And yeah, I remember like in what but I remember like what truly bugged me back then was not the comment itself, but the fact that I would be down at the table at night. My wife is next to me and I'm like sad. And that would just destroys me a little bit inside because I was like, why am I sad about this random dude that I don't even know? And my
Yeah.
wife is asked to deal with me being sad. That would just destroy me completely. And Taylor kind of was sad. It just for him was a little bit the same back in the days with Laravel 2 and Laravel 3. And over time, at least I speak about myself. I have developed this filter that just literally nothing brings me down anymore. If I'm
Yeah.
building something, either that be an open source project or even a video. With videos, people can be really mean to you. They can
Yeah.
they can tell you things about your face, they can tell you things about your voice, they can mock you, they will do all kinds of things. And thank God I have this filter now, because if I were starting to be a YouTuber 10 years ago, I would just already quit, because
Yeah.
people on the internet can be really mean sometimes. And yeah, I mean, now it's a little bit better. Honestly, it's just good now. I don't, I care much more about the people who are supporting me, and there is a lot of people supporting me, than the ones that don't even care. Because most of those mean comments, they would not come from people that know me, they would not come from people that even belong to this community of Laravel community,
Yeah.
PHP community. They would come
Yeah.
from random people, and literally just they would just put that out there without even thinking. Sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
they are not even being means. They don't just consider it a little bit. So this goes for all the people who are probably listening to us and are considering creating content that either be an article or a video or an open source project or giving a talk on stage. There is a lot more people that care about you than the ones that don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's an unfortunate part of human nature that we tend to fixate on the bad instead of the good, right? Like you said, you'll get 10 very positive reactions and one negative reaction, and it's the one negative reaction that people tend to fixate on. And I've certainly been there as well. Um, and I do think to some degree, it's like you just have to. you have to be willing to put yourself out there long enough that you can like find a way to cope with it. For different people, it's different approaches. Um, but like it's something that you do have to deal with when you put yourself out publicly on the internet for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but that said, I mean, I think that I gave a talk at Laracon EU last year, and it was all about open source. And for me, the key takeaway of open source has really been the community that it's opened me up to, and it's 100% worth it, to put yourself out there,
Oh yeah.
because if you can get over the few negatives that exist out there. I mean, I don't think I would be having this conversation with you if it weren't for uh, you know, having contributed to Laravel 5 years ago, right? Like, not that there's a direct line between those two things, but that
Yeah.
like getting involved and contributing to Laravel in 2016 or whatever, uh, which I recognize is much longer than 5 years ago, now that I think about it, is, uh, you know, open me up to a bunch of other things that that just like opened up more and more doors, right? And I think it's been fantastic for me. I see it for you too. I see it for a lot of other folks in the community. Like, yeah, you put yourself out there, you try to engage with the world, and like you take, if you can take the good and leave the bad, it's great, you
Dude,
know?
that it's such a powerful message, the put yourself out there code, because you know sometimes when people think about creating something or just putting themselves out there, either that be a talk, a video, an article, they think, okay, I have created an article and 10 people saw it. That's not the outcome. That's not the outcome of that single action. The outcome will be one of those 10 people, they will remember you, and they will probably want to do something with you in the future, and you build something together and you think, well, we built that something together and only 100 people saw it. That's not the outcome again, because 10 out of those 100 people will be your lifetime supporters forever. And there is
Yeah.
like, dude, if I start thinking, there is hundreds of examples of situations like this. And I just saw one today on Twitter, like Mary. I'm a big fan of Mary, one of the speakers at Laracon US, because I know how much she put work into things. She likes to be perfect on everything she does. And, when I saw Mary on stage, I thought, I know exactly how much she worked into deliver this talk. And the
Yeah.
fact that people are happy to are happy to see Mary on stage, and people were saying good things about the talk itself, I was just so happy, because I know this will just unlock. Mary will skyrocket from this place, because even today, like Jeffrey Way reached Mary. Would you mind
Yeah.
being one of our instructors? And because of those, you'd think, oh, I did a talk and that's it. No, like you did a talk, a lot of people saw and people noticed, and now you have Jeffrey Way coming to you asking you to be one of the instructors. And maybe
That's
like,
so funny. Go
and
ahead. No.
and then like maybe you will invite Mary again to be on this podcast, or it just unlocks everything. You'll find better job positions, and if you can combine this with being nice, which is something I always try to tell people too. If you are nice, just by being nice itself, you are also locking doors, basically. Because people want to be with you, they want to hang out with you, they want to know you more. It's insane, man. And honestly, every time I see a developer, there are developers way more talented than me. And every time I see them, but they are just always afraid of just doing stuff, it just breaks my heart a little bit. And hopefully, in the Laravel community, we are now talking about much more about this, about being open and putting yourself out there. Hopefully, this message will reach enough people that, a lot of people in the Laravel community will just do this naturally.
Yeah. I love that you brought Mary up. I was about to use the exact same example, because so happy to see that interaction. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but someone mentioned it and I went over, and I just like to see her go from just a couple of years ago showing up at Laracon, not knowing anyone, just like kind of taking a risk to check this thing out, and just to see her, I don't know, connect with the Laravel's community, and then engage with her local meetups. She talked at PHP NYC, she talked at PHP Philly. um I think that it's just a great example of how our community is really like rallying for people and trying to support each other.
Oh yeah.
Like I love, I don't know, I love that.
Dude, you can feel that. I was one of the speakers, and I felt that this is incredible, because I literally felt when I was on stage that they wanted me to be happy on stage and to be successful on
Yeah.
stage. And
Yeah.
when I was outside, when I was, for example, watching Caleb's talk, people wanted Caleb to just enjoy himself on stage, like having fun, and just they wanted Caleb to be successful with Livewire 4 too. And you can
Yeah.
see people clapping. They are, they are literally, the Laravel community have really something special. And sometimes it's difficult to describe a little bit, but it just comes out of small things like this. Either, you are on stage supporting people. I just love it. I just love it, honestly.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think I just recently spoke with a friend of mine who runs a local co-working location.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the things that really struck me is when I used to work there, it's not convenient for me to go there, so I don't get up there much anymore. But when I used to work there every day, he and the other community manager there would talk about community all the time. I feel like every third word out of their mouth was community, and I remember kind of like uh just feeling a little bit like, okay, like it's also just a place to work. Like it doesn't have to be so special. And then I went to other co-working places and I realized, oh no, like the thought and effort that they put into like fostering like a community of people in this space is actually special. And I just was like, it's like when you're in the midst of it, sometimes it's hard to notice it, but then when you like leave, you can sort of see more clearly. I had that experience there, and I feel like the Laravel community is the same way. It's just like there's something special about it, and there's obviously a lot. I think that there's been a lot of intention. I think that, obviously Taylor thought about this a lot. I think that Matt Stauffer is another example of someone who like put a lot of intention into the Laravel community for a long time, or still does. Lots of folks, yourself included, are like working to foster a really good space for everyone to be in. And when you go to Laracon, it's just like so obvious that that's working.
How was your Laracon, by the way? Like, did you have fun
It was
overall?
it was great. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I I I think it's funny because Laracon EU, for whatever reason, I think I didn't know a ton of people there. I guess I knew people. I don't know what the difference is, but I did not feel nervous going on stage at all. I felt fine. But Laracon US, like I was a nervous wreck
Yeah.
leading up to my talk. And like I was just like pacing the halls, just like I had this idea that I was trying to still nail down for like my just like concluding statement. Um, and it's funny, I like ran it through with Joe Tenenbaum the night before, and I was like, I can't get this one sentence right.
Yeah.
And I said to him, what I'm trying to say is essentially, and then I said it perfectly. And we both were like, oh my God, that was it. And I like got up to my laptop and tried to write it down. And I couldn't. I got it right just once, and then I lost it forever. But yeah, I ultimately, figured something else out. But I had a hard time being present for the first half of that first day. But then when I got my talk out of the way, I was able to like sigh and
Yeah.
be there for the event. I thought it was great. I mean, not I thought that every talk was phenomenal. I think that like um I've had other Laracons where it's like there are a couple that I'm just like not super interested in, or I
Hmm.
miss because of some reason or another. but I thought that the talks, I mean, I do think that the caliber of the talks and like the expectations of the talks are so, it's just like so high right now.
Dude,
I think that's
crazy.
part of why I was
Yeah.
feeling so nervous, is just like I was joking with Joe, like Joe Dixon, when he flew that
Dude,
drone
insane, yeah.
on the stage, he kind of screwed us all over,
Yeah.
because now you're like comparing yourself to, oh, well, am I going to be flying a drone on stage
Dude,
using reverb?
I remember like back in the days coming up with Sublime Text and doing some live code. That was it. That's like the
Yep.
bar. That's like the biggest, the biggest thing ever. Now it's the minimal expected is that you bring something that feels live or feels a little bit, and Joe Dixon came with drone, and that was like, oh,
Yeah.
I feel
Yep.
like, it's kind of expected that people put the bar that way because all Laracons have been, with A players basically. And it's kind of good that new speakers are kind of respecting that a little bit and bringing their A game too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like this year we have a great lineup, but also like all the lineup, lead was there for the expectations. All talks were great, and
Yep.
I really like this. I really like this Laracon. And to be truly transparent
Yeah.
with you, I told this Taylor too. When I saw like Laracon US, Newark, and 5 years ago, I thought, okay, this is it. This is the peak of Laracon and Laravel. We are literally in Newark.
We're at the PlayStation Theater in
The
Times
place
Square, man.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I thought,
How can
okay,
it get better than this?
exactly. I thought that was it. Impossible. Like this is the peak of Laravel. Caleb just came with Livewire, and Taylor came with Vapor. That was like that's it. We cannot be more than
Yep.
this. And then last year we had this huge Laracon where a lot of people came with stuff. I came with Past 3, Caleb with Livewire 3, Taylor with Cloud, and there was like stuff all over the place. That was already overwhelming for me. But this year we level up the things. Like we have a venue with 1,100 people, so the biggest Laracon ever. The venue was literally a concert theater, so
Yeah.
that felt huge. I don't know about you if you came for the rehearsal on the day before, but for me, when I came to
Yep.
the rehearsal and I looked this way, I was like, "Holy moly, this will
Yes.
feel so big to me tomorrow!"
Yeah.
Dude, I did the rehearsal 3 times. I was
Yeah.
so literally, I was so scared about my laptop don't have the proper resolution because of browser testing and shit like that. So
Yeah.
I did
Yep.
once, I did twice, and I did the third time at the end of the day because I really wanted to make sure everything was perfect. And it doesn't get easier for me. Like I have been in Laracons for a couple of years now, and every single time I'm just scared to death. Every single
Yeah.
time, so nervous, and I cannot even imagine. Like I have been speaker to day 2 sometimes, and just
Yeah.
not speaking in day 1 is just horrible for me. It just kills me inside because I'm like on the venue. I have to see these great speakers, and I know, okay, if I'm not perform, I will be the only one not performing, and it just feels so bad. And I'm just thinking about that. All I can picture is like people making fun of me and whatever. It's just crazy, man.
Yeah.
And I go to my hotel when that happens, and I just look at I just horrible.
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's a scary thing to do. It really is. I mean, it's a rewarding thing to do. And I think for me, I'm in a place in my career where I'm not I'm not trying to build an audience or sell something.
Hmm.
Um so I get to basically think about this as, this is really just a way to meet people and make friends. Which is, it's an incredible opportunity to do that, because it gives everyone in that room an excuse to be able to talk to you. And I'm like uncomfortable. I'm introverted in those scenarios. I don't want to go up to someone and talk to them. Other people are feeling scared. We're all just like wanting to chat, but like not ready to do it. And when you give a talk, at least there's a reason for someone to come up and say something about your talk. Um, and so, it's incredibly rewarding in that way. And it's incredibly rewarding I think it forces you to really master the thing that you're
About to
going to
do.
present on,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, I got home from Denver. It's 2 hours earlier here. It's a 2 hour time difference. So we put the kids to bed. It's 9:30 Eastern, so that's 7:30 Mountain Time. I went straight to bed. I slept from 9:30 to 9:30 that first day I got back. I was just so
I
exhausted.
know.
It is wild
Dude,
just
I
how
slept for 16
overwhelming it
hours, I
is.
think, and I was still tired when I woke up. Like the
Yeah.
man, I'm an extrovert. I'm lucky enough to be an extrovert a little bit, and I would come home. I slept for 16 hours, and I woke up, and I was like, I'm still exhausted. Like I feel exhausted, mentally drained from the
Yeah.
traveling, from everything, literally, from the shitty food I'm having
Yeah.
for the last 4 days, and and from speaking with everyone, so I just came home, slept for 16 hours straight, no stop. It
Yeah.
felt and I didn't wake up in the middle. It was just 16 hours straight of
It's
sleep. Yeah.
awesome.
Are you an
It's
extrovert or
awesome.
an introvert?
Um, I I think I span both. I think that when I get going, I think that I have a hard time like making that initial connection with people. Like I
Hmm.
don't I if I'm in a crowd, I tend to sort of like shy away um until I have like an opening or whatever, or someone like invites me in. But then I think that once I feel comfortable, I can be fairly extroverted. So I think I kind of play both sides to some degree.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely an extrovert, meaning that my hands start sweating when I'm around people. I just get happy and I cannot stop. Just so
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm definitely an extrovert. So, but it still drains my energy. I don't know if that has a name or
Yeah.
whatever. But at the
Yeah.
end of those 3 days, I cannot see people anymore. I need to go home.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a lot. It's a
yeah,
lot. I mean, and like you said, it's 1,100 people. It's a lot of conversations, a lot of shouting over music or other people, a lot of just, late nights, and it's fun though.
yeah. Did you went to the technical party?
Yeah, yep, yeah, I went up to that. I was still feeling kind of nervous about the talk. Joe and I each ran versions of our talk for each other before going up there. And then I told myself, okay, like stay for a half hour or an hour or whatever, and then go down and get some good sleep. I ended up staying until they kicked us out, actually. So I managed to enjoy that. It was fun. An old friend of mine from Philly um, moved to Denver many years ago. I lost touch with him, um, and he walks up to me at the Mostly Technical party, and at first I'm looking at him like, I know your face, but I don't even know where from, because it's like I haven't seen this guy for probably a decade. It turns out he's not a Laravel guy. He's not going to Laracon. He lives in Denver. He saw Aaron Francis's like story about losing his job, and from that went back and listened to the entire back catalog of Mostly Technical,
Uh huh.
and has become a Mostly Technical fan. So he just came to the party because it was Mostly Technical and he was in Denver. Um, it was the wildest, just like such an incredible chain of events. He was like, "Yeah, I knew that." Somehow he knows Matt Stauffer too, so it's like, "Yeah, I knew that Matt Stauffer might be there, and I thought maybe you'd be there, so I thought I'd just like come and see what happens because I'm like such a big fan of the podcast." Um, so I just ended up catching up with him for a lot of the night. Did you manage to go up, or were you too
No,
feeling
so
too nervous?
yeah, so I had this golfing thing during the day.
Yeah.
That ended
Yep.
up late, like 7:30, I think. And
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I'm speaking next day, first dude going on stage. So I thought, okay, if I go to this party, I will have to scream because there's a lot of people. In order to speak, you'll have to scream. I will
Yep.
destroy my voice. And I said, okay, I won't go. And I went to the hotel with my wife, and immediately fell asleep, which is something I was really happy. This is
That's
something else
awesome.
for those who are
Yeah.
not speakers have to think about, is that if you don't sleep, you will be no energized on the day after, and just, and for a lot of people, not being able to sleep just screws a little bit their head, like, because
Yeah.
you want to fall asleep, but if you start thinking like, I cannot fall asleep, it's just horrible. So anyways, I fell asleep, wake up in the morning, went to the gym, had good food, and yeah, it was ready. Everything just perfectly aligned. I was
That's
lucky.
awesome. Yeah. How was golfing for you? Have you ever been golfing before?
No, never golfed. So that was my
Yeah.
first
Same
time
here.
golfing, and it went way better than expected. Like literally, I
Oh,
thought,
wow. Okay.
yeah, I thought, okay, I will never being able to literally touch on the ball even. But I did some moves there, and I was not the
There
only
you
one.
go.
Like everyone sucked pretty much. Taylor,
So
Adam,
I certainly did.
yeah. So everyone sucked, and there was like Eric Barnes, for example. He is like actually a legit player. So he
Yes.
would
I heard
actually
that he
do.
has like a watch that like tracks the distance and like he had all his gear with him and
Yeah, I had like
oh,
binoculars to kind of understand the degrees where he was and understand the wind and how that would affect the trajectory
oh
of the
my
ball and
God.
whatever. So that was him. But also, like, there was one dude called Adam Francis that actually he said, "Oh, I never played, and blah blah blah." But then he was actually good
I
too.
heard he killed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think he
That's
actually
so
got some
funny.
he got some training before going to this golfing thing. I'm pretty sure
You
he
think?
actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cuz he was like actually doing some good moves, and you can see no way you just learn how to golf today. Like you actually know some stuff about this. So he said, "Oh, no, no, my first time." That's bullshit. He actually
Yeah.
got some training and some real one before going to this golfing situation.
That's so funny. Yeah, I was Dave Hicking was in Philly like a month or two ago. And we got together and just like on sort of a whim, we went to one of these like indoor golfing simulators where it's like, it's like a big screen and a little green and you can like hit golf balls into the screen and they have some sort of way of like projecting where the ball would have gone. And I went into it thinking like, okay, I've been to a driving range once or twice in my life. I like, how hard could it be, right? Uh, we practiced hitting for maybe a half an hour and then played like a fake hole. And over the course of two holes, I think we were plus 15 over par each of us. I was like, oh no, this is not looking good.
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, I did not have the Aaron Francis experience. I went out there and I was just like, oh my God, this is terrible. And I am terrible at it. I
Mm.
never need to golf ever again.
That was a fun one.
It was fun. I think I love the idea of a pre-Laracon event. I think next year it should be uh bowling or cornhole or I don't know, something a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, I think that was organized by Hank, and there was a lot of organization into it.
Oh,
There was a
sure.
lot of people golfing.
Yeah, it was a
There's a lot of
huge event.
huge event. A lot of people golfing. A lot of people that needed to be there to help us out.
Yeah.
We did basketball last year. That was fun.
Yeah.
Maybe next year will be soccer or something else. I don't know. But I
Yeah,
think
there you
it
go.
made the event a little bit more complete for sure. Made the event a little bit more
Yeah.
longer because instead of being 2 days, it will 3 days.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are speakers, probably helped a little bit to crack some of the anxiety a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh,
It gave us something to do instead of
just
just
look,
sit in the
yeah,
hotel room and be nervous.
and be
Yeah.
nervous and thinking about all the possible things that may happen in my talk. Yeah, so that helps.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that the tradition continues, but each year maybe it's a different thing.
Yeah,
It'd be fun.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. We've been going for a while here. I don't
Yeah.
know. If there's anything else that you have on your mind, I'm happy to chat. But if this is a good place to stop, I'm also happy to call it here.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to stop. And for those who are listening from the beginning, yeah, Past Four will come out on 21 August at Laravel Live
There you go.
Denmark. So Laravel Live Denmark, I will be speaking there, and I will try to tag Past Four on stage.
That's
So,
awesome.
I'll be demoing many of the things that I didn't have the time to at Laracon US. So many features that we didn't saw yet. I'm going to demo the new stuff because in between Laracon US and today, I actually managed to do more stuff into browser testing that I didn't thought about back then, because until that point I was working for the demo. Now I'm working for something stable, which is not the
Two
deal.
different things.
Two different things exactly. I work very well with goals in mind. This is something that works very well for me. Even at Laravel, I like to, for example, if I'm building a huge feature which could take 4 months, it doesn't work for me. Like, I have to work on goals, and the goal is like having partially this feature implemented in production in 2 weeks or whatever, and then I start to trim it down into something that can be shippable. And with Passport, it's no actually different. So I worked for the demo until that day, so everything was like literally perfect made to actually fit very well a demo. Now my goal is actually working towards something very stable. Even though with browser testing, I feel like a lot of what will be released will be still experimental, because this is something new, a lot of new code. So will be a lot of things that I didn't account for. Once people start using PEST 4 after the 21 August, they will see stuff for sure. And hopefully people will help me out with reporting issues, or even potentially fix those issues by themselves. But 21 August at Laravel Live Denmark, and that's the goal for now. And yeah, for those who listen to me, maybe you can check out my Twitter, enunomaduro. It's the username, and my website, nunomaduro.com. And that's it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're on Twitter and all of the socials, right?
Yeah, I cross post literally everywhere. So
I love it. Yeah. I usually ask, is there anything you want to plug? But I think we covered it.
yeah.
This has been fun. It's been a real pleasure to catch up and get in the weeds a little bit here.
Yeah, man.
And
And potentially in the future, we get to talk a little bit about various things like event sourcing. I would love to speak with you about that, about verbs a little bit more.
I'm game.
Verbs.
I really, I really wanted, I actually, my original goal was to tag verbs 1.0, like just like during my talk, just before I start, just be like, okay, before I get started, I just want to do this and just hit that publish button. But we just have one little gnarly thing that I really want to get sorted before we tag 1.0, and I couldn't get to it before
Right.
Laracon. So I'm going to try to tag 1.0 pretty soon.
I can imagine how painful it was to watch me using verbs for the first time. I was like,
I don't know. No, I think you did a good job. No,
Okay.
I mean, I was glad to see that you were able to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bit of a paradigm shift. And you have to, it takes some time to start thinking about things in a different way.
If you allow me to say, I think one of the biggest wins on verbs was it was not a paradigm shift. So it still felt actions to me,
Yep.
But it just came with a bunch of goodies on top of it, like that I just get them for free because I already build apps on top of actions, and verbs is literally actions too.
Yeah. It's just persistent actions, basically.
Exactly, and it would just get all that history just for free, literally, and I could just all use then all the features that event sourcing gives me. And I think like that's probably the biggest compelling reason to try verbs again next time, maybe on the real project instead of being something a little bit more simple for the live stream.
For sure. Yeah. Well, if you if you're working on something and want to dig into it, let me know. I'm happy to
make it happen. Yeah, let's make it happen.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been a blast. Until next time. All right.
Oh wow, just a bunch of stuff just appear on my page now. What should I do? Your files have finished uploading. Oh, that's it, I think.
Yeah, I see 99% on your one track, so just leave it open for a minute until that
Okay, so
finishes.
I'm gonna
But
click maybe on the close button here, and then I don't do anything, I guess. Just leave it open.
yep, I got everything but the video file, so that's loading right now. But that was fun.
Yeah, it was fun, man. A lot of people here on the audience watching our talk, and love to talk with you about all this stuff, about past, but also about like your experience at Laracon US. We got to talk a little bit about verbs, and maybe we can expand on it next time.
Absolutely.
A lot of people in the audience. I'm gonna just say hi to everyone real quick. Enric,
Yeah.
Ron, David, Tav, Resvan. A lot of people here. So, Luis, Roberto, what's up, everyone? Jonathan, Nance, Diabel, Canada, and nice to see you all. And thank you for staying with us today. Today, this was literally, for those who were not here at the beginning, this is literally an interview for the Over Engineer podcast run by Chris Morel, which is here with us today. And can I share, do you want me to share the Blue Sky or the Twitter or both?
Blue Sky. Yeah, I don't spend any time on Twitter anymore.
Oh, you don't?
I
Okay.
still have an account, but I don't really use it at all.
Okay, so I'm gonna make sure to share your Blue Sky. Do you like Blue Sky? I've been using it a little bit.
I love Blue Sky. Yeah, I mean, I think that it feels like social networks have just kind of changed, and
Mm-hmm.
because of the fragmentation, people are on Blue Sky and Twitter, on Threads, on Mastodon. Um, you don't have, you just don't get that like everyone's in the same place feeling anymore, which is a bummer. Um, but I enjoy Blue Sky. I've actually found that I've just committed to being on Blue Sky and Mastodon, like on both of them. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that maybe I just eventually just find one home, but it feels like the Laravel community that's left Twitter is on Blue Sky, and then the rest of the PHP community is on Mastodon. And I'm just like, okay, I can. There are apps that make it easy to just
Yeah.
be on both, and I'm just going to be on both.
So
Um,
for me, I see it a little bit different. But again,
yeah,
this is perceptions. You know,
yeah,
this is perceptions, and the way I see it, everyone is on Twitter. But you have a small minority that is using Blue Sky, and
hmm.
you have pretty much no one using Mastodon. But that's my feeling. Again, maybe I have Mastodon very bad configured. That's probably the reason because I'm not following anyone there. So
It's harder to like find a space on Mastodon for sure. Blue
yeah.
Sky made it really easy to like kind of jump in.
Yeah, so
Uh,
Blue Sky had this great feature on the very first time I created my account, which is this starter packs. I think they call it
yep,
that way.
yep,
So
yep. The starter kits. Yeah,
yeah, and I would just click on that thing, and I would just follow all the Laravel people immediately, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm at home, you know. Um,
yep.
Still feels like not a lot of the people I look into are there yet. So I don't
Hmm.
know if they will ever be. I don't know. So for that reason, I'm everywhere, and I just speak with it. I just check everything basically. I check Blue Sky, I
Yeah,
check Twitter, I check LinkedIn, I check TikTok. Yeah, I need to remind about TikTok now because TikTok, the younger generation, they use TikTok, man, and Shorts and Instagram. So I'm on those
yeah.
places too.
TikTok's great. I love. I mean, I don't spend a whole lot of time on it myself, but I kind of have the best scenario that my wife does, and then she just shows me all the good stuff.
Dude,
But I
My
love.
DMs is full of TikTok links because my wife just
Yeah,
finds something funny. Yeah.
it's a great. I think, like all social media, there are bad parts, but like I find that the energy on TikTok is phenomenal, and the way that like sort of like inside jokes spread on that network like is very amusing to me. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think
It's not
that
for
also.
me.
Yeah, I think that also like making learning a little bit more interesting because on Twitter
Mm,
everyone talks in the betweens, like they come up with this very expert take that you don't get anything really. Like you are reading a
yeah.
tweet that just looks too much smart for your eyes, basically, almost like that,
Sure.
almost like
Yeah.
that. And then you have YouTube and TikTok coming, and you see a paradigm shift where people want to have fun,
Yeah.
so you better
Yep.
create content that looks fun, but otherwise people don't care anymore. Like if you look
Yeah.
boring, if you come with this thumbnail that doesn't say anything besides the title, people don't care about that stuff anymore. They want to have fun. They want to laugh. They want to see your mistakes. So TikTok and Instagram and YouTube work really well for that.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I can't remember, you may already have an account, but artisan.dev, rtsn.dev is a Mastodon instance that I maintain,
Okay.
that has a handful of Laravel folks on it. It's not, the instance itself is not super active.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's there, and I'm committed to keeping it running for the foreseeable future. And if you put some time into finding the right folks, like I do actually think that there is a very active community of like non-Laravel PHP folks on Mastodon. PHPC.social is very big. There are a
Mm-hmm.
couple other big Mastodon instances that have PHP folks on them, and I enjoy it as like it's kind of a way to see what's happening within like the larger PHP space that's like outside of my immediate community. Um, so I think that there's a lot of folks there that aren't on Twitter at all, whereas I think you see more people who are on both Twitter and Blue Sky,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the folks on Mastodon
But I
aren't.
still I cross post to Mastodon too. So I
Yeah.
have like I don't know how many followers do I have there. Probably 1,000 or whatever. But I still post stuff there. Um,
Yeah.
Again, Twitter just feels more active to me, and this is just a perspective. A perspective.
Yeah.
Because if you ask like my nephew, what is Twitter? She will say, no, I don't have no idea. Probably like a very old thing with very old people, and it's probably true. We're like I'm
Yeah.
reaching 40 soon, so
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have reached 40, but yes. Um, yeah, no, I think at a certain point being on Twitter just felt bad to me. There was just too much stuff
yeah,
that the platform was pushing on me that I didn't want to see. Um, and I felt like enough people had moved somewhere else that I was able to be somewhere else,
yeah.
and it's been fine.
Ultimately, you want
But
to do what it feels right for you. So if that felt right
yeah,
for
for
you,
sure.
you should do that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All right, dude.
Oh, this
Thank
has
you
been
for
fun.
thank you for the interview. Thank you for also allowing this to be streamed to my audience. Chat, I want everyone clapping for Chris Morel,
Everybody.
and and I just shared the Blue Sky link in the overengineer.fm. By the way, on this podcast, you will find interviews to Taylor Otwell, Adam Wetham, Caleb Porzio, Joe T, and a lot of various folks from the industry, and most of these interviews will be in depth about technical topics, just like we had today. So, Chris, thank you for joining me today, and catch you next time.
All right.
All
Thanks for
right,
doing
dude.
this.
I guess I can
Until next
just
time.
just close this window, right? I'm fully
Yep, you're
uploaded.
good.
All right. Catch you
Yep.
next time, dude.
Thanks. Bye.
Oof, that was a good one, chat. Hey, and thank you so much for being on that side. That was a big live stream already. It's like little 9:30 almost, and we started at 7. So I appreciate you guys being on that side. How everyone is feeling today? I know that we literally talked about doing a stream about the starter kits. We can talk a little bit about the starter kits if you guys want. Let's go here to the coding. Let's open here Taylor's tweet. I don't know if you guys noticed, but literally Taylor Otwell just tweeted something that says you can now generate new Laravel applications pre-equipped with React, Vue, or Livewire, but no authentication scaffolding. So basically, what this really means is that once you want to start a new Laravel application, previously you would literally see which starter kit you want to use, and you would choose potentially Vue, but you would be forced to choose authentication. And the reality is that sometimes applications may not have authentication at all. So what do you guys personally think about this? I personally think it's a great idea to have something like this. And, once you select no authentication scaffolding, what this end up being is that end up generating a blank project basically. So this will be just a fresh Laravel application that has literally nothing on it. We can start by checking, for example, the view one. Let's click here. So all these repos are open source. You have blank Livewire starter kit, you have blank Vue starter kit, and you have blank React starter kit. So all these websites are literally, all these starter kits are literally open source. Okay. Feaster X is saying still not happy about them dropping Jetstream. I'm happy that Jetstream got dropped because I feel like I kind of like more to have this starter kits with everything being published on the web app, so we don't have to kind of hijack the container. I prefer it this way. Canada Rise is saying that's a great idea. And DBL is saying, I would love to see two-factor authentication being implemented, but overall it's nice to have that choice too. Canada Rise is saying the following: the starter kits is good just for a simple presentation website. And honestly, I may find myself using this because sometimes I do have a simple presentation website to do, you know what I mean? Kisa Lee is saying blank starter kit with the Filament v4 stable release. Ooh, that would be interesting. By the way, Filament 4 is being out next week, I think. But yeah, we have the Vue starter kit, and this comes, if I'm not mistaken, with composer.json. And if I click on it, I see, yeah, inertia, kind of what we would expect, right? Inertia, I see Pale, kind of all the dependencies we would see as well on the other starter kit with authentication, but this one will be a little bit more simple. I assume there is no controllers though, right? So if I click on app, click on HTTP, no controllers, only the abstract one, which can probably be removed too. Showtopper is saying the following: they must add two-factor authentication and team support as selectable when you select Laravel auth during the Laravel creation screen. That would be a good one indeed. That's a great idea, actually. DBL is saying the following: I mean, two-factor authentication is a branch, but not work yet, sadly. Yep, I would like to see that too. But yeah, apparently all the blank starter kits come with a single controller. I assume the Livewire one will be the same thing. Let me click here on the app. HTTP controllers. Yep, no controller whatsoever. I guess one of the questions for Livewire is if it comes with Volt. Let's click here on Composer. And yep, comes with Livewire Volt. Which is great, gives you the option of building traditional Livewire apps, but also apps that use co-location of components. Yeah, I mean, I like to do my own starter kit. Honestly, I still have to find time to publish my own starter kit. So I have this project called Laravel Starter Kit. And honestly, I should just publish this at some point. Because my own starter kit comes with Junie rules, comes with GitHub workflows, comes with a bunch of stuff that I always use. Comes with already PEST 4 by default. Here you go. Comes with PackPHP, kind of Nuno and Maduro Essentials, kind of the things I always use. So I should probably just publish this at some point. Yeah, Livewire Volt, I think, will be just a default on Livewire 4. Canada Rise is asking if you still need Junie if Boost is coming soon. I have no idea. I think the Junie rules will build on top of Boost, meaning that you would have Boost for some of the, baseline rules, but then you would just, stack them on top of Junie, I think. I have not seen the Boost rules yet. I need to find time to check that. My Junie rules are super simple. Honestly, they are super simple. Yeah. I don't like the agent to start hallucinating about the UI, so I like to keep the UI very minimal. But there is some requests that I always do. I have no idea what is in Boost at the moment. I have to double check. But yeah, back on the topic of starter kits, we have the Vue starter kit, which comes with. Does it come with any component? Yes, it comes. Ooh, interesting. TypeScript by default. That's interesting. And it comes with one component, which is the welcome .view. So potentially you can have your script all the way top, and this will be the template of that component. I assume the React starter kit also comes with a component too. Let me just click here real quick and see. So also TypeScript with GSX. And if I click on pages, I see the welcome page, which is a React component too. So we have an example, which is quite cool. We also have a types folder for make TypeScript happy. I don't think it has ShotCN installed. Let me see. So if I'm going to click on starter kit. I'm going to go all the way down, click on package.json. It does not come with ShotCN, which honestly is a good thing. Because I mean, if you want this level of simplicity, you probably want to build your own UI component library, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's good. I also feel that's good. Anyway, maybe we play a little bit with these starter kits, making a new app, and we start from this starter kits. There is a bunch of stuff coming soon next week, chat. About many of the topics I've explained you last week, including working with Vue, having Evan Yu, the creator of Vue, coming to the channel, but also playing with Devin. That's something I want to do too. So